Hello and welcome to another episode of the King Ugly Crude. Tonight is book club. It is our first ever book club. We are reading Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. If you have not read this book, please stop listening right now.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
We will ruin the book for you.
And this book is not one that you want ruined. So if you have not read all the way through to the end of Ender's Game, stop listening now.
He dies.
Griff, you're out. I guess you can't listen to it.
No, he listened to it on Friday.
You actually listened to it?
Yeah.
You did
I mean, to be honest, I listened to the book before and fell asleep. I honestly fell asleep. We'll get into the book and then I'll tell you where all that works. Cause yeah.
Okay. Griffith apparently is the Tatiana of books. Tatiana cannot make it all the way through a movie without falling asleep. It's kind of the funniest thing ever.
Yeah, okay.
He's not good with audiobooks. He's really not.
And I have a lot to... So, usually when we're listening to audiobooks, it is when we are traveling. When I listened to this book is when we did UCC for the very first time. And as Baron and Lonnon can know, that the weeks leading up to UCC are rough.
Draining.
UCC is the ultimate call-out challenge for anyone that doesn't know.
It's the most miserable experience of my life, just so everybody knows.
And there's not very much sleep before you leave. And so I was able to fall asleep very easily because of it.
Funny. All right. So before we get started on the book discussion, we have a special guest this evening. We have Ashley Jensen here, who is Case's wife, and we haven't met her yet. So Ashley, tell us a little bit about you.
Guys, well, I'm Case's wife. Not really much to say that he hasn't said before.
What are you talking about?
I don't know. Case and I have been married for going on 9 years now, and I don't normally read books, but I did this just to do something special for him and be able to talk to everyone.
Wait, you usually don't read anything? I'm not I don't know how to make that sound not bad.
Why are you bashing her?
Some people just aren't readers.
Actually, I understand why you don't read it either.
No, I don't unless Case is like, hey, this was really good and I'd appreciate if you read it.
Gotcha.
The last book we listened together was also another one by Orson Scott Card, and
worst book ever.
It's so good. It's such an incredible.
Which one?
The Lost Boys.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that one. I don't think I'd like it.
Yeah,
it is so good.
I love that book. It's probably one book I listen to at least once a year. It ends very
sad.
Oh, it's very sad. So I'm crying every time, and Ashley's like, "I'll never listen to another book ever with you." But I convinced her to listen to this one. So I'm really happy she actually enjoyed this one a little bit.
So Ashley isn't mentioning this, but she is an amazing artist. She just is phenomenal.
And cook.
Oh yeah. Although I haven't gotten to sample her wares recently, so I'm gonna have to get on that when we get over there.
My wares.
Yes, your wares. And trying to be fancy. We're on a podcast.
Skyla, did you get a headset?
No, these are my Galaxy Airbud thingies.
They sound so much better than the last. What's that thing you used last time?
Yep.
Oh, they just sound better. Maybe there's got some better echo control or something going on this time.
You said maybe Mumble fixed it when it messed up everything else.
Maybe.
All right, so let's talk about the book a little bit. Again, if you haven't read it, get out right now. Anyway.
Here's your last chance.
This is your last chance. No turning back now. So Ender's Game is sci-fi.
You ruined it for me.
Yeah, get out. So Ender's Game is sci-fi. It's the main characters are all children. It's set mostly in space during an epic human versus alien race war. And that's kind of the basic without giving the whole thing away. But impressions. What were your impressions?
Oh, I've read this book probably 5 or 6 times, and there's so much to learn every single time you read the book. There's so much information.
It's things you just either forget or didn't hear the first time. I'm with their case. I really like the book. I think it's good. It's not too heavy of a book compared to some other books that you can listen to, but it's just
And I was thinking about it today, and I was like, what's nice about this book is okay, so they are really young kids. I mean, 6, 7, 8 years old. And they don't let you forget that they're those ages, but they don't make it sound like it's from that perspective. So, like, it's still a book that's very interesting, very well written, and you know that they're still young kids, but you also are still intrigued by it. It's not like the young language. It's adult language, adult style language, but you still remember who they are.
Well, I think that's a big part of that is because all of the children in this book are like ultra level geniuses. They've been bred to be the smartest people on earth. So they're not going to talk like your typical 6-year-old.
I don't know if they were bred that way, because I mean, like, you listen to Ender and Peter, and I mean, Ender was requisitioned, right, because his siblings were so smart.
Well, they also looked at the parents because of that, because both of the parents are super intelligent, and they obviously the government knows about how intelligent these two are and can make intelligent children.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. All I mean is, like, I don't think they're like genetically bred, I guess is what I'm getting at. I mean, they
you
technically
mean like genetic modification?
Right. They're well, we won't get into that, but yes.
Because I don't think that they were genetically modified, to be created, but I think that they are certainly, the government has a lot of control, and in this society, it seems like the government has a lot more control. And so it seems like it's possible that maybe they guided the parents together, like, hey, you have these qualities we need, you have these qualities that we need, and this child that you would make might have exactly what we need.
Yeah, you could be correct. I don't, from reading previous books to this, I don't think that's the case. So like books that prequel it, if you will. But not knowing that, not reading these other books, you wouldn't know that. So.
And I haven't read any of the prequels.
Right. So I can totally see where you would see that. And there is one possible genetic modification. I just won't tell you who it is.
Oh.
Okay.
We kind of will get. Oh, right, it's another book. I forgot about that. Sorry,
because
I've read this entire.
Don't spoil books.
I've read the entire series, and so I really had to set my ideas really down because I'm like, oh crap, that's a different book. I can't say any of that.
That's why I listened to it twice.
Yeah, me too.
And I didn't actually finish it the second time. I got almost done. I'm where he meets his second teacher, main teacher.
Gotcha.
I was still listening to the book, and we were driving home from a road trip in case it was like, does this happen in this book? And he just kept backtracking. He was very confused, like, what went on in this book. I was like, no, this, and that. Oh, no, okay, there's so many books.
There are so many books. There is absolutely so many.
I think that once when you read a book that you love, you almost always jump into the sequel of it pretty quickly afterwards. And so for me, they start to meld together, and I don't know where the lines are. I'm like, I don't know which book this happens in. I just know the order that it happens.
Right. And Ender's Shadow.
Ender's Shadow is so much that.
It's not, and it's not even a secondary book. It's a parallel book.
Yeah, it's not linear. It's another perspective, like the Edward Twilight book and the Thor book from Divergent.
So it gets together. I mean, like, those two books are really, you could totally overlap them in a massive way.
So something that really stuck out to me in like the first couple of chapters of this book, or actually it was when, what's his name? The actual guy that picks him up and takes him to school. Graf. That's it. Yes. When he picks him up, they're talking about the parents and Ender's parents' religions and how they still kind of Catholic and Mormon, and they still try to make things work. Sneak in little things because they're not allowed to do those kind of things, or the government was really over control of that. I love that little defiantness of the parents, even though they were trying to comply in just the way that I want to be okay with society, but I still believe the things I believe, and I'm going to stick up for the things I believe, just silently, kind of thing.
Subversively.
Yep.
Yes, and because I didn't catch up on that first couple of times I read that book, and this time it really stuck out to me. Like, man, they really are suppressed on what they can actually believe and be really vocal about.
Well, and that comes to play later on when he gets to school, with one of his friends. But I mean,
yes.
I think we should talk about probably, Skyla's got questions, right?
I do. Do we want to do a basic plot synopsis real quick?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So Ender is a 6-year-old boy. He is the third. The world is very much like China is now, where you're limited on how many children you can have. And you're supposed to only be able to have 2. The government asked Ender's parents to have a third child. So Ender is a third.
And you need to preface, a third child doesn't have any rights. Like, they aren't allowed to go to school. They don't get any funding for anything. And you get more and more heavily taxed based off of how many kids you have over that number 2.
It is. It's mentioned a couple of times in the book that it is a shameful thing to be a third, because of it, culturally, people think, "Oh my goodness, you're destroying the planet because you've had 3 children." So a third, it very much informs his personality. He is recruited. The first little bit of the book, he has a monitor implanted into his spinal cord that monitors everything that he does and says, and
what
can
other
see
people
through.
do.
Yeah, can see through his eyes, and he has that removed. And
it's not the thing too. You gotta mention that it isn't just through his eyes; it's through his entire feeling. Like everything that he feels, the monitor can also feel and react the way he has react.
Well,
yes.
And
So
the other thing is, to put in there real quick, is that it's also left into Ender, I think, almost 2 years longer than most other kids.
yeah, the doctor says when he's pulling it out, I almost killed that kid. Because it attached to his body and became part of his body. But the government knows who this child is, like, inside, better than anyone else, better than probably he knows himself. So they then come to his house and take him to battle school, which is in space. It's at a space station. And he, when he leaves, he knows that he will not be back at the earliest until he is 12. So 6 years, twice his life. And so he gets to battle school and is taught combat, he's taught war tactics, he's taught history, he's taught anything you would need to know to be the most, remarkable general ever to grace the earth.
Lots of physics, lots of math.
There were lots of comparisons to Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar and people like that, because Earth needs a general to coordinate the next attack on the alien race that almost wiped out humanity before. The buggers. So he's trained, and time passes, and he fights with different leaders at the school. And again, these are all children. So these are all 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds. But they are very much like adults. They think like adults. They, with a little less maturity, I think. There's less empathy because they all feel like they have to prove themselves. And then he graduates to command school. Is that right?
Yep.
Graduates to command school, where he meets.
Well, you should probably mention that he graduated from command school, 2 years earlier than most?
I think it was even earlier than
Usually
that.
most people didn't go until they were 16.
Yeah,
so he went when he was 10.
Yeah. And he has managed to walk that fine line where he will have people follow him wherever he leads, but he has no friends because he is the leader. He is the general.
And he can't have friends.
That's a conscious decision on his part. But I love that you see him regret it a little bit, that he's like, he wishes that he could have friends.
He does. He would love to have it, but he realizes that it doesn't help him or them.
So he graduates to command school and meets Mazer Rackham. Mazer Rackham was the genius general from the last last war with the buggers.
Yeah, war. So
and
this is the third we're setting up for the third invasion. This is the second invasion where Mazer came in. But then we're talking about the third is when Ender comes in.
So Mazer becomes Ender's mentor and teaches him all the things that Mazer thinks that he's going to need to know. It's a while before Ender learns who he is, because he's grown up. It's like
no, it's the first day. First day he gets to know him. Is it the first
day he finds out?
Yeah, but it's after he gets completely
prolonged.
Beat up by him.
Yeah, it gets destroyed.
Because he walks out the door. He's getting ready to leave after Ender double foot kicked him, and he's like limping out, and he's like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "I'm Mazer Rackham," and then the door shuts and locks.
It felt like really a lot longer. because the time passage in this book, passing in this book feels very weird. Like sometimes
it feels like it should be a lot longer than it was. In my opinion, like it doesn't feel like it's only, but from like beginning to end is only like 6 years, I think.
And for me, it feels like a lot shorter. So you have these moments where you follow Ender for a whole day or 2 whole days or 3 whole days. And it's, a quarter of the book. And then all of a sudden it's 4 years later. And so I feel like there are moments where like vignettes where we see Ender and then, you see what's happening. And then all of a sudden a bunch of time passes and we get another glimpse into his life, into his world. I mean, the book would be too long, obviously, if we followed him all the way through battle school.
Can you imagine all the battles? Like, it would get to a point where it would just be
boring.
Yeah.
Poor Ender. I mean, I'm sure that's how he felt. But so he gets to command school, and they're playing a series of virtual games where he's, they're throwing all kinds of crazy battle tactics at him, and seeing what he can handle and what he can do. And then
this is where his team comes back into play. All these people he's worked with in the past
in the battle school. Yeah, that was really neat. They come back and they are his
subordinates,
squad leaders.
Yeah.
His not generals, captains, that kind of stuff. So they come back and they assist him, and he's telling everybody where to go and what to do, and allowing them the freedom to do what their strength is, and he's getting really tired because they give him battle after battle after battle after battle, and he's not getting really any rest. And they finally said, okay, this.
And it's not just that; it's also that he's not getting rest because he can't sleep. He physically, it scares him to sleep anymore.
Yes, and so he gets to the last battle, and all of the, Colonel Graff is there and Major Rockham is there, and they're like, all right, this is the last one. If you pass this one, then you pass command school and then go on. And so, it's a pretty intense battle, and he's not sure if he's going to make it, and he does a couple of crazy things, and they finish. And all right, seriously, if you have not read this book, this is your last chance to turn it off now. Okay. So you get to the end of the last battle, and they tell him that none of these were virtual and that he just defeated all the buggers. That he destroyed the bugger planet. Yeah.
Genocide. He committed genocide and killed the entire race of buggers.
Well, and the interesting part about this is he just gets to the point where he's all like, I just want to show these teachers, I'm just done. I'm done. I'm just going to blow everything up. I don't care.
Yeah, that's where he gets to in that last battle. Yeah, he's like, whatever. It's just a game. I'm just going to kill everything.
And what's funny is how he gets back to where he was in battle school, the enemy's base or the enemy's door is down or whatever it is.
The enemy's gate is down.
Enemy's gate. Dude. That's right. Gate. I couldn't think of gate. Like, I don't know why.
So, you would think that would be a really logical place to end this book, where, yay, he's the hero and he has won and it's over. But you find out that time has passed and he's being sent to one of the bugger planets to colonize it. So the humans are going to spread out where all the buggers were instead. And he, I don't even know how to describe this part.
He finds a place that is completely made up of a game he used to play, and he recognizes everything about it.
And only he knows this area because he's the only one that's ever gotten to that point in the virtual game. It's in battle school. And so that's where that game comes in play. They play the game. It's called the mind game. It's so the teachers and other people can learn see where the kids' minds are at. And so each game is developed for the kid itself. And so this particular place that Ender finds is directly only for him. He's the only person that would ever have this in his mind, that would know about this. And he comes upon this place that has every piece of scenery, every swing set, every way that this place is built.
The dead giant.
Yeah, the dead giant skull.
Exactly. So he realizes that this is... Sorry, Ashley.
Oh no, he finds this place because the Earth is sending up their second grouping of
so they're on the corner.
colonizers. Yeah. So he's like was set out to find a place for these new people to be, and then he happened upon this place where he had seen in his games.
Yeah, and he realizes that he's found it because the buggers built it for him so he could find something. So he goes into this castle-like structure that the buggers have built for him, and he finds a bugger egg, a fertilized bugger egg.
So here's something to think about. I apologize, but
I think that's the end of it.
Yeah, that is the end of it. And the reason I say this is that, there's no way for them to have known that he was going to go to that planet. So how many other planets did they do this exact same thing on?
Ooh, they never go into detail about that in any of the books.
No, he doesn't ever.
Huh, because they would probably do that.
Right, because the whole thought was that they need to continue on as a species, and the only way to do that is to have Ender do it.
And Ender knows that he would do that, and that's actually how they end Ender's game, is that he is going to travel the planets, the galaxy, and find a planet to bring back the bugger race.
Yep.
So it gets into some very deep conversations. Like, it takes you into places where you didn't think this little sci-fi book was going to take you. I think that's one of the reasons it's been so popular.
And it's honestly, it's a really easy read, I feel, for a sci-fi.
Yeah,
people.
It's not. It's not too full of jargon.
Right, no, it's definitely not. It's got a lot of just the jargon that's there is more of just the really the oh gosh, the boys slang is really the biggest jargon you've got.
The boys slang I enjoyed.
It's fun. It's fun.
It's very
it's very comedic,
childish.
It's one of the things that reminds you that they are children, because the rest of their behavior is very adult.
Having to be, but yes, very adult.
Yes. All right. So I've got a couple of questions. So the first one, is childhood a right? So Ender was robbed of his childhood. Is childhood a right?
Like that, he was a third. While I would love to say yes, childhood is a right, but he was a third born into that civilization, and I kind of didn't have one. Didn't have a right to anything.
Actually, he did. So that was one of the cool things, is that when they requisitioned him, right, he was... Yeah, like his parents didn't have a choice. Like if they wanted to take him, they were going to take him. But he did have a choice. So if he didn't want to go, he didn't have to. So, I mean, he did have a choice to have a child's life. Now, I think that it really depends on what your definition of of that child's life, or that what was the child's the right to a childhood. That's what you said, right, Skyla?
Yep.
So it really depends on what childhood now is totally different than a childhood would have been 100 years ago.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
So do they have a right to a childhood? Yes, but what is that definition of that childhood? Because the only way to define that is based off of what is happening around the surroundings then.
Okay, so I will give you this question then. Did Ender have a childhood?
He had his childhood.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, did he have a childhood in the normal sense? No, but what is the normal sense? I mean, if he
as
felt
a
like
battle
he had
school student, it was a normal childhood.
Yeah, because they didn't go into depth of what happened. It's not like they spent 24/7 doing that. I mean, kids now go to school for 8-10 hours a day. So, and then, well, not 8-10 hours. 6 hours
Koreans.
a day. 6 hours a day, and then they go and come home and play around, which is still what Ender was doing.
I'll agree with that. If they had told him that he was and Graf got to it a little bit. Graf mentioned it slightly, but if they had told him that the world rested on him and that he had to save the world and that all of these games weren't games, would he have had a childhood?
Absolutely not.
No,
he wouldn't.
And that's the thing. Yeah, because he's told it's a game because he would not have mentally been able to do it.
They went over that. They said that he was too empathetic to have done it, have killed everybody, if he wouldn't have if he didn't think it was just a game. If he would have known what he was doing, he wouldn't have done it.
Well, you can tell that reaction from the way after he kills the buggers, how it tears him apart. And that's actually the next books. I mean, till the end of the series,
without a doubt.
It rots inside him that he killed or committed genocide. And he just can't believe it.
Yeah, but I mean, like, and the whole reason they used a child is because they could tell him it was a game, because an adult would never have believed it, right? So that was the other reason they needed a child.
All right. So so those of us who haven't read future books are the ones who are going to answer this one. Does Ender have any chance of living happily ever after?
I think it's all of a mind game, in my opinion.
I would agree. I think he has the chance of living happily ever after. I'm not alluding at all to any of the books. I'm just saying, based off of this book, I think he has a choice to make, and that choice will make it depend on whether he can have that, life.
And I think the way that the book ended for me, and I'm one of the ones that I've not listened to any other book except for this one. So the way that I would think about it is that he found this, and he has the potential of being able to get the buggers to be back alive. And I really think that would be, yes, that puts a huge weight on his shoulders. But as much as it puts a big weight on his shoulders, it also makes him so that he does have a point to life, and it wouldn't ruin your life. I mean, he found out that the Queen, when they put all the memories in him, that they knew this was coming because they started the battle, and it was their fault that they did it.
And they felt bad, but they just didn't know how to communicate. I mean, we don't speak phonetically, and so there would be no reason for them to think that we didn't speak phonetically, though.
Great word.
It is a good word. I really like. He does come up with a couple of things in there, but like phonetic, yeah, it's a good one.
What is the definition of phonetic?
I have no idea.
Then how do you know you're using it right?
Because that's how they use it in the book.
Good. Okay. That's good. I love that excuse, Lonnon. That's how they use it in the book. That's how I get to say it now.
That's so funny. Okay.
But I would honestly have to agree. I think it has to deal with any person that's put into a hard or difficult childhood. They have the choice to make a happily ever after. So Ender absolutely has the choice to be happy.
Real quick. So philotic it was literally made for this book. So I was using it correctly. But anyway,
good job,
a philotic web is a philosophical and physical construct that described the interconnection of not only basically the things that make up the universe. It's kind of like atoms, but totally different.
Midichlorians?
Well, yeah, we could call it that. It's actually spelled AIU with the little apostrophe thing, AS. And I know what it is, but I can't think of it. I mean, I remember it from the other books. But also the lesser intelligent philotes. And the web was the direct result of every philotic connection in the universe. So everything speaks philotically in some way. That's how the Ansible works. But our minds don't think that way, so we don't get the same type of information.
So they speak through the Force.
Yeah, roughly.
Okay. All right. Next question. So speaking on philotically, the buggers communicate telepathically might be a word that we understand a little better, using no identifiable external means of communication. Was it inevitable that war would have to occur when two sentient species met but were unable to communicate?
Yes, and Graf actually brings this up on the journey to command school with Ender, that if you can't talk to somebody and get their story, how do you know you're okay? Or how do you know you're safe?
Well, and see, I disagree, and I disagree because it's not based off of if they speak telepathically and we can't communicate. But they came down so aggressively that at that point, then yes, there is going to be a war. Now, had there been no aggressive, and they couldn't talk to us, left, at that time, then it's like, okay, now we need to be in a defensive manner because we don't know what's going to happen, but we don't necessarily need to go attack them.
Right.
I'll agree with that.
It was the attack is why I felt like they were going after him, is because, more or less, they
attack.
It was luck that he beat them.
It absolutely was.
Super luck.
And
That was the only reason why they were going around for round 3, pretty much, is because they didn't want luck to be what determined whether the race was going to live or not. It's kind of survival of the fittest is kind of where they were looking at it. I mean,
it's an us or them type of scenario.
Right, and the problem is that they knew they were years. I mean, they were. I mean, leaps and bounds ahead of them. Because the buggers were leaps and bounds ahead of the human race because they figured out a bunch of stuff when they took over the base. Which I don't know if we're into that point yet, but when they took over the buggers' base and found all of the stuff that they had made it so they could go to that technology.
Exactly.
So I'm going off of the questions that I found a little bit. Do you think that kind of either lack of communication or miscommunication is the basis of most wars?
No.
I think aggression is.
I think domination is. I think that there's rulers that think that they're more important than anyone else is.
I actually think that it's similar to Griff's lines. It's just people. It's rulers or a ruling class playing chess. They, at the end of the day, they're just playing with people's lives. And who are the ones who suffer? The bottom class. Generally, the bottom class. And it's just who is willing to kill the most people. Well, actually, who's willing to pull out first because so many people have died. Because the ruling class don't go to war. It's the letters.
That's very true, Brian. I didn't even think about that.
What? I don't know what you're talking about. They didn't make it so that Bush didn't go to war or anything like that.
Yeah, and I was talking to my mother-in-law about it because we've been talking about a little bit about politics and about a civil war, and I was like, all it is all a war is who's willing to kill more people. It's an elite chess game. How many pieces are you willing to lose before you give up?
And do you care? Like, are you? I mean, to be honest with you, in my personal opinion, the majority of those type of people are psychotic. You know, they don't have any empathy for people.
Well, they don't. Look at every ruler that has started wars to gain land have no empathy, and what's funny is that some of them get revered for it of how great they were. Alexander the Great,
Genghis Khan,
about how great he was, and it's like, no, these were horrible human beings. Like, the only reason why I'm gonna go with places that don't go to war and go to war but don't is that they're the pursuees. They're the ones that got suckered into the war pretty much.
So I'm gonna disagree with you a little bit.
Me too. So go ahead, Skyla, and then I'll do mine.
Okay. Leaders like Alexander the Great and Genghis Khan and Julius Caesar had to make people believe in them enough to follow. So you cannot force someone to fight. You can conscript them, you can draft them, you can put them in the army, but you can't. We know that people who are fighting for their own land, people who are fighting for their own reasons are much better at it and are going to be much more effective. So I think that if these rulers are not necessarily, I wouldn't necessarily group them all together and say they're horrible people. Did they do a lot of damage? Yeah, they did. But they had a whole lot of people behind them doing the same thing.
So did Hitler.
Actually, Graf actually says that when he says, look, Ender, you have a choice on whether you want to come or not. Because if we make you come, you're really good cannon fodder, but you're not going to be a good leader. So if we force you to come, then we don't want you really.
Yep. Great in this particular case doesn't mean wonderful. It means great. Could mean great and wonderful. It could mean great and terrible. So people like Caesar, people like Alexander the Great, people like Hitler, people like Saddam Hussein, they're great. They get people to follow them. But that's a choice that those people are making. And oftentimes I think it is because of a miscommunication, many times an on-purpose miscommunication done by the leaders to make one set of people hate another set of people.
Yep.
If that makes sense.
I also think that it has to do with, in those cases, in a bunch of those cases, they weren't just trying to take over people just for the sheer fact of taking people over. They were also trying to better their kingdom, make it bigger for the sake of being bigger. But in some cases, people's lives got better, not worse. Genghis
Khan being particularly good example of that. People's lives improved.
Another one of that.
So I think that in my personal perspective, if you take it down to a personal level, most wars are because of a misunderstanding, a miscommunication, a lack of communication with someone who is different from you, and the assumption that different is bad. And that's where I feel wars generate.
And see, I guess I'm going to go to World War II with that. Where do you see that perspective? Because I don't see when Hitler took people over as that was they weren't communicating. It was that they didn't bow to him.
But Hitler's a different case. You think about Hitler, he was a guy that he believed in nationalism, right? He believed that his country was the best and that everybody needed to believe to his ideology. He also believed that he was God. He had a God complex. So he believed that everybody needed to be under his rule and his control. So to use Hitler as an example is kind of a poor example because Hitler had a God complex. He believed he was the greatest, the best. So
I mean, so did Caesar, so did Alexander the Great, and so did Genghis Khan. That is not an unusual trait in a very high-level leader.
Nope, it isn't. But we got a lot of books to still talk about.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay, so let's go to the next question. Orson Scott Card has stated that children are a perpetual, self-renewing underclass, helpless to escape from the decisions of adults until they become adults themselves. Does Ender's Game prove or disprove this opinion?
I would say it proves it.
Can you read that one more time?
Orson Scott Card has stated that children are a perpetual, self-renewing underclass, helpless to escape from the decisions of adults until they become adults themselves. Does Ender's Game prove or disprove this opinion?
Yes, in my opinion, it does both.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I mean, it does both. I mean, in the book, I'll tell you, yes, absolutely, because they're just manipulating that whole scenario.
But he gets to the point where he learns how to manipulate them as well, and he's still not an adult by this time.
Yes, but he also did mass genocide without him knowing, without any of them people on the team knowing any of it, because they had convinced them that it was a video game they were basically playing.
Absolutely.
Well, and they also pushed him to his absolute limit, and so he was not noticing things he may have noticed if he was fresh and ready to go.
Yeah, and how much was that on purpose? How much was that on,
necessity?
We've got to, yeah, exactly. I mean, so some of that could have been, it could have been on accident, right? Not on purpose. Who knows?
True.
Yes, that as well is it says they are helpless to escape from the decisions of adults until they become adults themselves. So does that not make you an adult until you're able to actually make a decision that, you know what, I'm not going to listen to you?
Or at least you can decide for yourself whether you're going to decide to do that.
Okay, so when my 4-year-old says that, no, Dad, I'm not going to go to bed right now, does that make him an adult at the moment?
No, because he is not free of the consequences of that choice.
Well, is anyone free of any consequences? We're all going to have consequences for actions.
Yes, exactly.
So at what point do we become adults?
Is he independent?
In this situation, okay. As an independent thinker, okay. Not an adult, but just someone that has their own independence.
Yeah, I guess it's as if he can make his own choice on the decision placed before him without a external consequence, from somebody else. There still might be a consequence, but it's not necessarily a parent, right, giving that consequence.
Right.
Okay.
I
figured that. I just wanted to put that question in there.
Well, and I think that also parents have the default of because I said so that cannot be logicked out, cannot be reasoned with because I said so, or if you live under my house, you abide by my rules. And as parents, until they are not in our house anymore, we always have that option whether we choose to use it or not.
Yep, Motega hates it when I say that. Dad, that's not even a good answer. Well, sorry.
Doesn't need to be. I'm the mom. Thanks.
I'm mom or dad. I'm sorry if you don't like it. You can change it when you have your own kids.
Well,
this is something that you can change when you're...
He's like, do you think I'm self-centered? And I'm like, no, I don't. Why? Because you're not. That's not even a good answer, Dad. Well, but that's you're not.
Weird conversation. That's a weird answer to his question.
But I get it's a weird question, but I don't know how to specifically say no. You're not a self-centered kid. It was just funny and it came out of the blue. That's what was weird. But anyway,
you couldn't prepare for it. Okay, so next question: The government in Ender's World, plays a huge role in reproductive decisions, imposing financial penalties and social stigma on families who have more than 2 children, but exerting pressure on specific families who show great genetic potential to have a third, like Ender. Is government ever justified in involving itself in family planning decisions? Why or why not?
Never. They shouldn't have any control over that.
Why did they do it in Ender's Game?
Because
They said it was
thought
because we were taking Go ahead, Griff.
overpopulation, because they thought that we were overpopulated, which is why they were sending all the peoples to the Buggers world, because that's where they were going to figure it out. And that would be the perfect time, because in 1976 is when they were saying that by this time in the world, everyone would be starving from world hunger, because there was going to be no food left, because we couldn't plant enough food for everyone to survive. And what a shocker, they were wrong, as normal.
So they said because of a lack of natural resources. So Griffith, you're saying that you don't believe that there was enough of a lack of natural resources?
I don't believe that the government should ever have a say over how many kids you can have. I don't think that the financial burden is ultimately the reason why there's a financial burden is because the government had so much control on their life, and because because taxes were going to everyone, and so it was unfair because they have 5 kids getting tax paid or everything versus the ones that don't have any kids, and that's just not fair, which I agree it's not. But that's also because the government took control over it rather than the decision of the parents and of the family to make that decision on their own and have a financial burden to them.
Yep, which is also why they started taxing some of the different, most of the places. Poland was one of the ones that, didn't abide by it, and that's where John Paul, Ender's father's from.
So is that from a different book, Lonnon? Because I don't remember.
Nope.
That's in that book.
He talks about it.
There's a lot more from a different book, but it does talk about it in that one.
So you guys are saying there's never a case when the government should be able to say whether or not someone has a baby or not?
Absolutely
At
never.
what point is the government going to stop, though? Because we've learned that when you give the government an inch, they'll take a mile. Every situation, they'll do that. All right, hyperbole. Nearly every situation, they'll do that.
Ooh, good word, Bear. Okay, all right, interesting.
Why do you think they should have a say in that?
I don't know, because I am not omniscient and I don't know every possible scenario. So I'm not going to say never ever.
Neither do they.
I think the problem is that if you start letting them control that kind of stuff, what's next? Right? What else are they in control?
Well, and this would be the perfect case of it, because in the 70s they said that we should have a child rule where there was only 2 children. That was something the government had talked about then when this book was coming out, that there was only supposed to be 2 kids because we were supposed to be starving at this point in time, and that's documented. They said that we would be completely out of food, and that it was cruel to let us be out of food. And now we have more food than we know what to do with, because the people up at the top thought they knew better than us, and I mean, I'm gonna go with the government. I'm gonna go to the God aspect of it and go, if the problem is they took God out of their life, and so they just assume that they know better than God. And if God feels that there shouldn't be more kids on the earth, guess what's not coming here anymore?
You did notice that infertility is rising rapidly, right?
Yeah, but
yes.
Is that by man or because of God? I mean, there's 2 ways to look at it. We realistically, we don't, but that is a lot of man-made decisions is why infertility is happening.
If God wanted more babies, he would send more babies.
You're absolutely right.
Well, but
you'll end up in a situation like China's in right now, where China is their population is not increasing, it's decreasing, because they because one, they're all trying to have boys because boys are better than girls over there, and 2, because of that.
Fact, not it. That's what they really think, Skyla. That's not what
I know, and I can still.
I totally agree. I'm just saying, and that so they you can see that their population is starting to decrease. There's another country, it's not just China, there's another one, the same type of thing, and their birth rates are like at 1.7 or 1.7 children per couple or something like that, and they're actually losing population because of that.
So this turned into an interesting conversation. All right, so let's move on to the next one.
That's why we have book clubs, right?
Oh yeah, I love book club. All right, is genocide, or in the case of Ender's Game, where an entire alien race is annihilated, xenocide, ever justified? Was the xenocide of the buggers inevitable?
This is
Sounds
where I'm going to
hard.
say, it is a very hard, but the problem without being able to talk to them, and they were the ones that initiated it.
Yep.
We wounded them in the second part of that war. Is all we did, is we just went, okay, well, they see that we could go and attack them. My problem is if I'm going on the side of survival, I think that xenocide in this example had to be done because it was either them or it was us. And if you can't talk to them and you can't do anything about it, and they're the attackers, what can you do? Because the next time they come around, it's only going to be worse because they learned how to attack you the first time they attacked.
They had only learned how to speak to one person phonetically, and they didn't even speak. They just gave as much information as they could. Yeah. And so it couldn't have been a one-way conversation wouldn't have worked anyway. You had to have that two-way conversation. So, and the only way that they could do it is through dreams. So I think the
thing you got to remember too is that they tried to make contact with the buggers, but the males or the pilots of all the ships they would capture and everything else, they would literally kill themselves or be killed by the queen, and not be able to. They weren't able to do anything with them at all. They basically just became a dead body or a limp noodle at that point.
They were just killed off. It'd be like cutting off a finger. That's really what it came down to.
It wasn't a big thing for them. And so
cutting off a fingernail.
Yeah, like a fingernail. It wasn't a big deal at all.
And so that's the thing, is that the only way we ever would have been able to communicate, or they would have been able to communicate, is by capturing a queen, which they never would have allowed, ever. So I think xenocide in this case was absolutely the only way to move forward.
Okay, speaking in a still hypothetical but less fictional area, is genocide. Let's speak genocide. Let's talk about humans. Is that ever acceptable?
Negative.
Are we talking about like human to human?
Human to human.
No, I think that mass genocide is absolutely wrong. I think finding the ruler that is causing that genocide to happen and dealing with them, and I mean dealing with them is that pretty much this is wrong. These are all things that are taught to be wrong, and he has committed all of these. I'm not even evil because I don't want to go to the
murder is
God
wrong.
side.
We know that, right?
Right. Yes, but making this happen and them when someone attacks the other person and the other person defeats that other people because they were attacked, it is not wrong in any way. Getting rid of a full race or a bunch of people that started it, wrong, because you can. I know it sounds terrible, but you can kind of re-educate them, and if you aren't re-educating them, who do you know? Who can you go with that believes what they believe? That weren't that weren't.
If you can't talk to
indoctrinated.
them, that's the difference. Is that if you can't talk to them, then there's no way to communicate to try and fix these issues, right? Even if it's a compromise between the two of us, it's still, you can't fix those issues. There's no way around it. So is genocide a thing that is or should ever be done? No, not. It doesn't even matter if it's here or a xenocide. If you can, get along or at least make it amiable or amicable between the two at that point. I mean, and I'm not saying even if it's not at that point, you should be doing genocide or genocide, but you should obviously try your hardest, and maybe sometimes it's just leave.
I think those are good answers. I agree. I don't think that it is ever acceptable. Genocide, like Orson Scott Card set up such a perfect scenario, because most of us who read this are going to think, no, wiping out a whole species is not okay, especially, sentient beings. But when he presents it in the way that he presents it, where there's no communication, they came and attacked us, and then they came and attacked us again, I think
you fight back.
Yeah, there's no way. I mean, did they have to go to their home planet? I mean, that gets right into the iffy part where you're like, I mean, couldn't they have just waited and been ready, be on the defensive?
No, because we already played defense twice at that moment, at that time.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with this. They smoked me once. Shame on
them.
Yeah, smite me twice. That's where I think if they would have done it one time and retreated and it never happened again, I think that it would have been given up right then and been like, okay, they understand we are gonna fight back and they're not gonna come back. But what do you do if someone comes and attacks you once? You probably forgive them. When they come back the second time and you defeat them again, are you gonna wait for the third time, or are you gonna figure out how to get to them first?
You're right. Absolutely.
Are you going to stop the abuse or whatever it is? Are you going to stop it, or are you just allowed to happen, continue to happen? It's that same mentality.
Yep.
And I think that he set it up very good in that. And I think that if they would have got it where it was one less war, or if it was just one time that it happened, and then it's like, whoa, okay, so why are we going after these people? I mean, it happened one time. I mean, yes, I understand what all happened, but they left us alone at this point in time.
Yeah, let's just set up some defenses.
Let's set defense. We'll set up our defense just in case anything happens, and if it happens, then we'll play the defense game. But I think, and really that's where, like, he set it up so perfectly that round 3 there was no choice to have a third war. There was no, we are going to end this now because there's no other way that we're going to win it.
It was at that point it was an us or them scenario. Now in the end of the book, obviously find out differently, but again, there was no communication, so there was no way to know that.
With the information that they had at the time, they made the best choice possible, which is all any of us can ever do.
Right.
All right, so next question. Ender's Game has often been cited as a good book to read by readers who are not fans of science fiction. Why does it appeal to both fans of science fiction and those who do not usually read science fiction?
I think you actually said it earlier, because a lot of science fiction books have a lot of extra vocabulary you need to know. And
Lord of the Rings.
But Lord of the Rings is actually fantasy, not sci-fi, but still same thing. And actually, that's one of the things that Orson Scott Card talks about in his afterword is that, the difference between a fantasy book and a sci-fi book is one's in space and one is not.
That's funny.
But
I disagree with that, but okay.
I would agree. I would disagree in some cases, but that's how, like,
the time machine does not happen in space.
Right, but publishers, that's how they consider fantasy versus sci-fi.
Okay. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea doesn't happen in space. I'm just going to... Sorry, I'll stop now.
I agree. But...
Yes, Skyla, there's some exceptions. Good job.
I mean, those are just two off the top of my head. Actually, I want to hear from Ashley on this question.
Well, I do the Marvel stuff, and it's kind of all, like, I could relate here and there on different stuff, and what do you want to know?
I want to know, did you find this enjoyable? And did it feel really science-y? Did it feel over your head, or did you feel like you were able to follow along pretty easily?
I could follow along pretty easily. It was, nothing was like crazy jargon that I wasn't grasping or anything. It was an easy read for the most part. And it was also like, I was trying to think of like different things that would happen because, like, I think I told Case, when they were talking about running the simulator, I related it to like Guardians of the Galaxy. In like the second movie where they like used like what were they, like pods, the golden race people. I was like, oh, I wonder if it's like kind of like that. But I was like, nah, they wouldn't. They had plans like years from now that they would. But I was like relating it to stuff like that. I was like, oh, they could do that.
So did you have, completely different. Did you have any inkling that Ender was destroying a complete race when it was happening?
I don't think that I thought like, oh, this is it, he's ending the race. But I did have like a thought. I was like relating it to like that movie I watched where like, oh, that could be possible, I guess, in like a sci-fi scenario where they like send out pods and, have someone else navigate and fight from like a completely different location.
Remotely control, yeah.
Oh, she was way more on it than I was. Yeah, I had no clue.
She was talking about this with me. She mentioned that. I'm like, holy crap, that you caught on to that. But she'd never done this series before that movie came out, and you pick up little things here and there, and it was awesome that she brought that up to me.
That's cool. Liv, my 14-year-old, was reading it, and I kept asking her. I'm like,
I'm sorry. What?
I know, right? Yeah.
Shame is a Tesla.
Yeah.
Oh, that's scary.
Well, Tesla's a little bit older, like 8 weeks. Yeah, 8 weeks. Yep.
Sorry,
anyway, that's fine. So she was reading it, and I'm like, okay, what part are you at? And when she got to where Ender realized that it wasn't a game, she came running downstairs, and she was like, Mom! And I'm like, oh, you got there. You got there.
Oh, you're there. You're there.
Finally, I can talk to you about this. I was so afraid to spoil it for her. I was so afraid that I was going to spoil it for her. I felt bad. I was like, I'm not going to talk to you about it because I will ruin it for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, but like, it's such a, like, you're all of a sudden like, oh, like I felt like the first time I listened to it was like, oh my goodness. Like, I felt like the blood drain from me. Like, I can't believe he just destroyed a completely whole race. And I can't even blame him for it.
See, sorry, go on. That's where that's probably where I listened to this book twice, and I fell asleep until the very end, where they found out that so the first time I listened to it, Lonnon gave me the multicast whatever version that was an abridged version, and it ended when they won the war, and nothing else past that.
That's when they ended it?
Yeah, they ended it there. So the end of this book was all new to me, but I got to listen to when, like, they're like, oh yeah, you just defeated all the aliens. And so, like, that wasn't a surprise to me. And it probably would have been a lot more of a surprise. I'd be like, oh my gosh, if I would have just never listened to the book the first time, because I fell asleep almost like I feel like I listened to this book more in depth where it wasn't the multicast like this one, where it was just two people that I listened to, or 3 people that did it.
Yeah, Gabrielle DeCure, Stefan Rudnicki, and Scott Brick, all fantastic readers.
Yes, and so it was much better for that. So it's actually one I'm probably going to get Aurora to read it, because I'm curious what her reaction will be.
Just to forewarn anyone that's made it this far into the podcast, the language in this book is
not children's language.
PG-13-ish. It's definitely got some strong language in it in places.
Oh boy.
It does, but I wouldn't even consider it PG-13 anymore compared to the PG-13s that are now out, that you can drop 5 F-bombs before it's an R word, or before it's an R.
It's 5 now?
Yeah, I think so.
Actually, I think it's more than that.
It was 2.
It's more than
it's ridiculous. But either way,
depends.
there is some language in it, and that is one thing that I've heard that Sky doesn't like about Orson Scott Card, is that he swears too much, and I would agree with that. But also on the same point, there's plenty of other readers that are way worse.
Oh yes.
Or writers, not readers.
And it does lend some authenticity to the environment where children are basically left to, govern themselves. And children use that kind of language to make themselves feel more adult and seem more adult to the people around them. So it does lend authenticity.
Right. And in his first draft, he actually went back and removed a ton of it, because he's like, I don't want my kids to learn this language from me, because I put it throughout the book so much.
And through a kid, too, talking or speaking that way.
Right. I think the reason that it's probably relatable and easy to understand, going back to your actual question, Skyla, for me, is that he was using kids. And so because he was using those kids, it made it easier to swallow on some of these things that were happening.
More accessible.
Like the whole MD device. Like, totally doesn't make any sense why it works, but they explain it so well. It's like, oh, yeah, that totally makes sense why that would work.
Right.
The doctor device.
The doctor device.
But I love that he doesn't get it. He's like, MD device. And he's like, okay. That used to stand for medical doctor. So, doctor device.
That's a total dad joke.
So
like Graf
totally a dad joke.
Total dad joke. Right
Except
there.
for it's not Graf that did it. It was somebody else that named it.
Well,
but
but Graf was waiting for the laugh when he told him. I mean, it was a total dad joke. He was waiting for that laugh, and then he had to explain it, which takes all the fun out of it.
Because it's not funny.
It's hilarious. So, next question. I actually love this question. Peter appears to be the personification of evil, but as Locke, he acts as a good person. How does Card treat the concept of good versus evil in Ender's Game?
It's totally...
Explain the siblings too well in your synopsis.
Oh, yeah, we didn't, did we? Ashley, fix it for me.
She's confused, or doesn't want to, so I'll just jump in here and do it. Basically, the two siblings of Ender's, number one is Peter, and he's the reason he didn't get picked was because he was too evil.
Too aggressive. He was too aggressive.
And then the second was his sister, Valentine. Valentine was not picked because she was too soft.
And they actually requisitioned that they had a girl. So they had a boy first. He was too aggressive. They're like, okay, you should have a girl because maybe she'll still have that same mentality but less aggressiveness. And she did, but too far not aggressive.
And so the siblings, while Ender's up in space doing his whole stuff and everything up there, they are basically trying to take over the world.
And all I can see are Pinky in the brain.
Earth. Yes.
I just see Pinky in the brain. What are we doing tonight? We're trying to take over the world.
Just like every night. Basically, Peter sets it up that he plays the nice character, Locke, as a pseudonym, right? Is that the correct way?
Yep.
They do it anonymously through the internet.
And so you have Locke, that is Peter, and then you have Demosthenes. Demosthenes, that's just Valentine. She's taken the more aggressive side of it. But to the question, Peter is very good, or as Locke, he's very good. So what was the question?
But he also partially plays Demosthenes. He's telling Valentine in the beginning what to write, and then she personifies the character. She eventually learns how to write like Demosthenes, but at first that's Peter.
True, Bear.
So the original question is, how does Orson Scott Card treat the concept of good and evil in Ender's Game?
It's totally a perspective. Like it depends on your perspective what good and evil is. That's the problem.
It is so hard to think about this because of Shadow the Hedgehog. I can't get it out of my head.
Yeah.
That's another book in the series?
Yeah. But basically what it comes down to is the fact that it's just totally you're gonna side with one of the two based off of your personal beliefs and feelings, right? And so good and evil is all a perspective. That's really what it comes down to. And I think that's what he's trying to get across, is that even Peter, evil, is not necessarily as evil as somebody else, even though to Ender he was evil.
And
right?
Valentine
Does that make sense?
Points that out at the end of the book.
They even mentioned that look at Hitler, that maybe he would be not as bad as a Hitler if he's going to take over the world.
Well, and he thought that Valentine would keep him in check and make it so he wasn't that person.
Well, and I think that the card was also trying to illustrate the fact that good and evil is a fluid concept. It's
ever changing.
And a person is neither good nor evil. Peter was not all good and he was not all evil. He, from Ender and Valentine's perspective, he was totally evil because he was a bully. He was
Do you guys remember? I totally just remember this when Peter comes in to Ender the night before he leaves and says, "I'm sorry I treat you the way I treat you."
Yeah, I love you. Yep, I love you.
I love you. Something like that. And it's like, holy cow, you never expected to hear that from Peter, ever.
But if we were to look from, mom and dad's perspective, or if we were to look from Peter's perspective, I mean, if we were to look at Ender from Peter's perspective, we would see Ender as evil.
True.
Yeah.
Very true.
And so good and evil is not, I mean, there's certainly good and evil, but I don't think that humans are one or the other. They are very much both.
Ashley wants to ask, but how would you see that? She's too afraid to talk, apparently.
I just don't want to look dumb.
She's like, how do you guys see that?
You can't look dumb.
How do we see what?
How does Ender look evil to Peter?
From Peter's perspective is what Skyla is saying. So if this book was written from Peter's perspective, Ender would be the evil one because Ender was the third.
He would be the usurper.
Ender was the one that's going to be going to battle school because he was so much better and he got picked. And not that Ender was actually evil, it's just from Peter's perspective, he would be evil.
That Peter failed. And that here is my little brother showing me up. So I think he is the devil, or not the devil, but I hate him because he is better than me.
Pointing out my flaws.
Well, and mom and dad had to go through having a third and look at all of the burden he's putting on the family. And he's made Valentine sad by leaving. And now I have to take care of her. And, just from that perspective, Ender would be very much his... Maybe not evil. Maybe you're right. Maybe he wouldn't seem as evil, but certainly the enemy.
Okay, I can see that. Okay.
It's
Case, did your internet go out?
Are you there? Sorry.
Oh, there you are.
What'd you guys last year? I'm so sorry.
You went to go talk, and then there was nothing.
Sorry, I said it's basically Baron's and mine's relationship. Joking. It's not at all, but
Funny.
Wow.
in the moment it was funny.
I am hurt.
Wait, but in this situation, does that make Baron Peter?
Exactly.
I
Baron
guess
hates
so.
me because I'm so much better than him.
I mean, Baron did push him off of the monstrosity.
I did
It's
not
okay.
push him.
All
My
All
God.
my older brothers are just Peters, and I'm just Ender because I'm just awesome.
Well, you are the baby boy.
I am the baby boy.
No, go on.
All right.
So,
Okay.
Okay,
Last
so
question.
Last question. In their thoughts, speech, and actions, Orson Scott Card describes children in terms not usually attributed to children. In the introduction to Ender's Game, he states that he never felt like a child. I felt like a person all along, the same person that I am today. I never felt that my emotions or desires were somehow less real than an adult's emotions and desires. Do contemporary teens feel the same way? Or do only gifted children feel this way? Or is it a universal feeling?
I don't know. I consider myself gifted, so I wouldn't know.
I mean, Lonnon said it. We were all thinking it.
I mean, honestly, I don't know if we're gifted, but we just have a different mindset than most.
I
people,
think it's
I feel
because
like.
because of mom and dad, right? I mean, mom was very street smart, dad was very street smart, mom was very book smart, and so we got a lot of both from both worlds, and we got a lot of out of the box thinking. I mean, like mom
We
was
were
more
definitely
in the
taught to
box
think differently.
thinking, and so from the get go, I've always thought of our family more as like the Wiggins than the regular type of people. And maybe that's
Gosh,
just
I hope
me.
we're not that dysfunctional.
Right, I agree, but I'm just saying, and I'm not trying to put other people down. Some people just don't have it. They don't, and I'm
Well,
sorry.
we were taught to think very differently than many people, and so we see things differently. And so when you see things differently, you see things that others don't. So that doesn't necessarily make us smarter, but it makes us see things that other people go, oh, I never thought of it that way before. And I imagine for most of us, that's something that we're kind of used to hearing.
Sounds like we're the first ones in the gulags, is what you're saying.
Yeah, definitely.
Because we don't think like everyone else.
We don't. So what do you think? Do you think all kids feel that way? Did you feel that way as a kid, that your feelings and emotions were just as valid as anybody else's?
I don't know. At 6 years old, I felt that way. But
They say teenagers, so think about when you're a teenager.
Yeah, I mean, I probably felt somewhat that way. Even though now that I'm older, I obviously think that differently. But yes, I don't know. I'm gonna go with.
I think the way I'm looking at it is, man, I thought my emotions were more important than anyone's when I was a teenager, and anyone that knew me as a teenager knows that. And that.
What?
Me too, Case. Me too.
I know, and it's now looking back at it, 12 years. I mean, sorry, not 12 years. It's been almost 15 years since that time in my life, and it's like, wow, I was an absolute jerk. I don't know how else to describe it except for the fact that I was just I thought I mattered more than anyone else in my entire family. So I don't know. Does that answer anything?
So, do you think that that's
comment?
why adults? Do you think that that's why adults treat kids as if their emotions, their choices, their thoughts don't matter?
How far deep are you going?
No, you're good, Griffith. That's actually, we're getting pretty deep into this because that's actually a really good topic.
To be honest, that was me talking to Jericho. He's playing a game.
Oh, we thought Griff was really getting into it.
Yep. No, Griffey's watching. He's doing something else like normal.
Minecraft.
Yep.
No, he's playing Lego.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, I think Skyla, I think you're right. You hit the nail on the head on that one. That's why, as a parent, you kind of have to be like, all right, his emotion or her emotion is, they think that they mean so much more than they actually know. But it's hard to control your emotions when you're that age. You got so
It's
many
hard to
hormones.
control your emotions all the time.
I'm a glass box of emotion.
Love you, Griffey.
It's interesting now having a teenager because I'm terrified she's going to be like I was. Terrified. I had a really terrible temper. And yeah, I'm really worried that she's going to have those same struggles. But at the same time, I've told her on several occasions, this is going to feel like the end of the world. This is going to feel awful. This is going to feel like this is the worst thing that could ever happen, but it's not. it's going to feel that way, but it's not. And she just looks at me like I'm nuts because, I'm her mom and she's a teenager. But we're about to move and she's 14, and that is a really hard thing for her to do. And it feels huge to her. And I remember that feeling, but it makes it harder to navigate her through it because I know that, in the long scheme of things, this isn't, it's a big deal, but it's not that big a deal. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Oh, 100%. Yes.
She'll get over it, in other words. Because, yes, I know exactly what she's talking about. Because, yes, it'd be very hard. She's starting out her freshman year, basically, in high school with not knowing anyone, and that would be very, very hard.
Yep. And we've been here as long as she can remember.
When she moved to Arkansas, her freshman year.
Arkansas?
Yeah, and look how weird she turned out.
A lot. No, I went into it. It was kind of like I didn't know at first how to feel about it, but then once I got there, I just made the decision to okay, take this as a new opportunity, do what you got to do, make friends, and you'll, if you're meant to be happy, that it'll happen.
I love that.
This is a choice.
Happiness
is a choice.
There you go.
That's our family motto.
So real quick question, because that was the last one, right, Skyla?
It was indeed.
Do you guys think that it needed to be Ender could never have somebody come to his rescue? Do you think that had to be done for him to do what he did?
Yes, I think I think that the only way that the only outcome is that he had to outthink them, outthink his bullies, and what he did. And he obviously killed both of them, but
and hurt one of them, broke his arm.
Right, but the only way he could win that battle is that he had to outthink them. And if people would have come to his rescue, he would have always thought, "Oh, someone's just going to come to my rescue because I'm such a young child." And that's why they did. No, I don't think it's that important. I think it's because of I think it's the kid side of things. Because as an adult, I don't think that. But tell me right now, as someone that's 12, if your parents come to your rescue every single time there's a problem, what do you expect when you're 12 years old?
But that wasn't the question that Lonnon asked. He asked if he had ever been rescued. Could he have done what he did?
I think no. I have to agree with the way that it happens, except for the fact that I think Ender himself took it too far, where he pushed everyone away, even the ones that were trying to be like ally, sorry, which ends up becoming his ally, which is just funny. Ally, he pushes him away. There is nothing that says that Ally and him couldn't have actually worked together. I know they were different squadron leaders or whatever it was, commanders. I don't know what it is. But they could have still been friends. But he pushed him away because he felt like if he brought anyone close to him, that they would get hurt or he would drag them down.
Okay, then another one that kind of builds on that one. Do you think Ender took both of those things too far?
I don't think so. I think that as that age of a kid, he was right. In his thinking, the only outcome is to destroy them now so that he doesn't get attacked, because down the road they're only going to get stronger.
Yeah, which is, it's a pretty intelligent thinking. In my opinion, I don't think most 6-year-olds. I think most 6-year-olds would, beat them up and leave because they wanted to get out of there.
But again, he is not most 6-year-olds.
He is not. What's your thoughts, Skyla? And then Case, I'm sorry, I saw you chiming in.
I think it's hard as a mom. So reading this book this is the first time I've read it as a mother. And it changed my perspective on it. I got angrier at the school leaders. I got angrier at the way it was done. I understand that it was necessary for him to grow the way he needed to, that sometimes you have to do the hard things, but they were pushing him so far and they knew, here's the thing, they knew that he had Peter's genes. They knew that he had the potential to be Peter, and they pushed him and they pushed him and they pushed him. And what if they had created a monster?
Yes, I could go with that, and I think that the best outcome of that is that they didn't tell him that he literally killed 2 people. Besides,
and they
before
had to
the
keep
genocide.
that from him, though. Could you imagine that? Just look at the way he reacted when they found out he killed the buggers. If he would have found out that, hey, he killed 2 kids, like people he knew personally, I think it would have destroyed him. Like he would have been at North Carolina for the rest of his life on that lake.
I agree with that. But if we're talking about good and evil, if you look at it from the perspective of those children's parents, is Ender good or evil? He's the evil bully that killed your child.
I think that if you looked at they had tapes of one of them at minimum.
Both
Did they have
instances.
both?
They did.
Yeah, they had tapes, and you would have shown that to the parents. The parents would have went, "Okay, you're right." I mean,
the trials were public.
Nah, you wouldn't.
You
no.
would still personally feel like he was the one that killed your kid, and it would be really hard. But at the same time, you'd be like, look, he wasn't trying. He wasn't the one that started this.
I would have blamed the school. I would have never blamed Ender.
Oh, yeah. That too. Yeah.
Yeah. As far as the murder, I would have put the murder right on the school. That was never Ender's fault.
But it wasn't murder because it wasn't premeditated. So it was.
All self-defense. Every one of this was self-defense.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not his fault that he knew how to fight. Like he knew exactly what obstacles to take or bonuses. Like the whole shower scene. Like soaping himself up and making the room steaming himself up, making himself slippery. Like who would have thought about that ever except for Ender?
Yeah. All right. So I touched on it a little bit. Those of you who have read the book more than once, did being a parent change your perspective of it?
No. Absolutely. In my opinion. I read it when I first started drilling. So back when I was 19, 20-ish. Something that range.
So,
I was 21, sorry.
First time I listened to it, I already had kids.
That's because you've had kids forever.
20 stinking years almost.
So yes, I think it changed my perspective. Like it made me feel like for John Paul, for Ender's dad, made me feel more for him. I know there's not much about him, but I know the little things that he did to baptize his kids. It really hit home to me. Like if we were not allowed to practice our religion anymore, I would still practice my religion. I'm sorry, or not sorry. I just would do it. Sorry, not sorry.
I don't think it's just that. I think it's also that. I mean, with my kids, I look back on it and I look at like, do I want my kid? I mean, do I want my kid to be Ender, right, and finish these fights, or it's hard. It's really hard.
Parenting is hard.
I guess that from my perspective, I mean, would I want them to have been murdered? No. Do I want my kids to outthink the bully and to be able to figure out how to make it so that bully's never going to come back to them? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Even up to and including lethal force?
Not to be mean, but
if that's the only way?
If that's the only way out, yes. And not to be mean, but that's how he set it up. That, I mean, he was a third, and that bully, now, was he going to kill him? No. And should have Ender probably taken that very first fight as far as he did? I don't know. He was 6 years old, so no, of course not. But I don't think he even realized that he took it that far. I think that he thought about it, but yes. Do I think that with Bernard?
Bernard.
Bonzo.
Oh,
with
yeah.
Bonzo?
It's Bonzo.
100%. I think that he took it exactly where he should have taken it, because that Bonzo was out to
that
kill
was
him.
A deadly fight.
That was the survival of the fittest. That was to be killed or not to be killed. That was his choice.
Interesting.
And at the end of the day, he never thought he killed him. He thought he just disabled him to the point where that it was done.
Well, until the dreams started happening that were given to by the buggers. Then he realized that he probably killed him.
So the second time that I read it, or not the second time, but this time that I read it, the first time I associated more with the kids in the battle school, and this time I associated more with Valentine and people outside the school, because now I feel like, as a parent, I'm still living my own life, but I'm also outside my kids' lives. And, I'm there, but I'm outside. And so I found myself looking forward to Valentine's moments where I could, be part of that. I associated more with her. As you read throughout the years, do the characters that you associate with, do they change?
Sorry, thinking. Honestly, I don't think it's really changed for me. But that's also because I read more in depth into the series, and you get more of those moments like you're talking about, Skyla.
You get so much more of the backstories, and you get to know the characters so much more, and you get to know them as adults, that my perspectives didn't really change a whole lot the second time I read Ender's Game.
Yeah,
That's where
I
I'm
would
at
agree.
too. Yeah,
My
It's 'cause
perspective hasn't changed, but I mean, I've just picked up more.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to add?
Face really wants me to say this. Okay. The perspective thing was like, I related it to The Little Mermaid. Like, growing up, you're like, yeah, The Little Mermaid, you're so right. Go be with who you want to be with. But then, like, she's like, I'm 16, I'm not a child. But then as an adult, I'm sitting there like, no, you're 16, go sit down.
You're 16. You're a child still.
You made a legal contract. Daddy can't get you out of it.
She's a minor, though. Does it really count?
Depends on the laws of Atlantica.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, like, there's a lot to that. Like, I really think that everybody should listen to, at a minimum, Ender's Shadow after listening
That
to
one
Ender's
is
Game or
very
reading.
Yes.
Because it is such a good companion book to it. I mean, the rest of the series is really good. And actually, the reason that Ender's Game was written, because Ender's Game was a short story to start off with, but Ender's Game was written because he wanted to write Speaker for the Dead. But then he realized, right, well, Speaker for the Dead was his main one. And he realized that he couldn't do Speaker for the Dead correctly without going back and redoing Ender's Game as a full book. And basically he went to Tor and said, look, to do this book that you've already contracted me to do, I need to do this book first. And they're like, same terms? And he's like, deal. So he wrote it first.
Yeah, and
nice.
By far, Speaker for the Dead is my favorite book in the series. Baron hates it.
I definitely want to listen to it. Now that
It's
I've
not
actually...
Speaker for the Dead. Xenocide is my least favorite book.
That's because he doesn't like the Pequeños.
It's not the it's the freaking whole book. It's like, just end already. My gosh, we've gone over this situation like 17 times. I hate that book.
I think you should listen to it again, Baron. Now that you're older and have kids, you should listen to it.
And I haven't listened to the entire series of the pre-war and the Life on Earth and all those.
You haven't listened to the Shadow series?
The Shadow series are great.
Yeah, I listened to the Shadow series. I listened to Speaker for the Dead and Xenocide, were the last two Orson Scott Card Ender's Game book I listened to.
Children of the Mind.
Like, those are
you missed out on Children of the Mind, too, which was awesome.
Was it Children of the Mind that I didn't like?
It was the very last
one. Whichever one. Yeah, that's the one I was ready for it to be over. Xenocide I thought was okay. Speaker for the Dead I thought was good because of all the years that go by, but
I thought the last one, the cool thing about that is just how expansive his mind is made my mind think personally. Maybe not anybody else, but I was just like, mind blown. But anyway, so yeah, that's
anyway. All right. So if anybody's wondering, we got the discussion questions from a website called Lit Lovers, LATLOVERS. And they got them from Orson Scott Card's website. So skip the middleman and go straight to Orson Scott Card's website. If you enjoyed Ender's Game, absolutely read Ender's Shadow. It's fabulous. And there are, I believe, two other books in the Ender's Game quartet? Quintet? Is it a quintet?
So you've got Ender's Game, Ender's Shadow, War of Gifts takes place in that same time period.
There's also that little mini-series about the what's that thing that he can talk to? That electronic computer device thing.
I know what you're talking about. I just remember her name.
I can't remember the name. There's that little tiny series, and I listened to that before I ever listened to the other ones, and it made so much more sense because in the other books, it's just this.
A lot of the philodic stuff is done in that book. That's where a lot of it happens.
Yeah. Honestly, the series is a really good series. If you're more interested in this book, please proceed on to it. Finish to the end, and then start to the prequel, because the prequel is not done yet.
Yeah, and neither is the Shadow series. The Shadow series, he's finishing this year in November. I've already pre-ordered it.
Heck yes, about freaking time. It's my favorite one.
Yes. So personally, and I think most of my siblings feel this way, I love Bean. Bean is my favorite. Bean is my favorite character of all time for these series. I like other people in the book, but Bean is my guy.
And that's
maybe
what Ender's
it's just because he's smart.
All about.
Yeah, it's all about Bean, and it's just so incredible.
Oh, sorry, we never explained who Bean was in the synopsis real quick.
We never talked about Bean. We didn't talk about Bonzo. We didn't talk about...
I was trying to make it quick.
Oh, no, I get it, but Bean is basically...
I didn't do well.
Ender's understudy. Best way to describe it.
Understudy, or... I mean, I don't even know.
Or
he's
equal.
way smarter than Ender, but he's so smart that he wouldn't be able to do the things that Ender did. Does that make sense?
No,
he gets in his own way.
He is an adult.
No, he thinks on a much higher level to the point that he couldn't have done the genocide. He couldn't have done it.
Because he would have known. Anyway, all right. So we will decide on a new book for next month very soon, and we will let you know. If you want to talk about what you loved about Ender's Game or what you didn't love about Ender's Game, feel free to hit us up on Facebook. All right, somebody with the tag.
Instagram, Facebook, at King Ugly Crew.
We also have an email and a website.
KingUglyCrew@gmail.com and KingUgly at WordPress.
KingUglyCrew at WordPress.com. And I'm working on a couple other things so that we can maybe host these different places. But
and if you guys are interested in a t-shirt, let us know because we'll start making those too. I'm putting you on the spot, Lonnon.
Yeah, shirts, stickers. I'm working on getting a website so that I can start selling that stuff.
And if you have book selections that you would like us to think about, let us know on any of those sites again. And we will talk to you later. We'll see you next week. Thanks again for joining us. And stay ugly.